My name's Sia, and I'm the president and founder of the Neuro Initiative. And today we're talking with Coach Diane Chu. Um,
Yeah, okay. You can just introduce yourself and say what we are going to be talking about.
Okay, so I'm Diane Chu, or as I'm known online, Dementia Coach Diane. And I am caring for my husband at home who's living with Lewy body dementia, and we're going on about 6 years now. So I'm excited actually to be talking with young people who are interested in how to perhaps support people in their life, loved ones, maybe grandparents, could be, other relatives that are experiencing dementia, to give them a better understanding of both how they can support their loved one and maybe what they can learn even about themselves through the process.
that sounds awesome. So just to add on, like continue on to that, I wanted to ask you, what's your backstory and what really inspired you to start posting on social media?
Well, I have to confess, it was fear, unfortunately, but sometimes that's what the way things happen in life. I was pretty pretty scared, obviously, when we got the diagnosis, when I realized that Ben's symptoms were progressing so rapidly that, I would need to be his caregiver for the rest of my life. And I really wanted to continue to care for him at home, but it wasn't really something I was going to be able to do myself because I don't have children. We don't have children. I didn't have any relatives to help. And I already knew I was out of my depth. So I did have some paid caregivers on board, but it was pretty expensive, and we hadn't really planned for this in terms of our retirement. So I have to confess, I was having a conversation with God one day, like, what am I going to do? And it was through that conversation, which you could say it was with my intuition or, with my higher power, I got like the nudge to start to share our journey. And quite honestly, I didn't want to. I mean, I come from a generation that didn't grow up with social media. I have to confess, I was a little judgmental about it, actually a lot judgmental about it. And it felt really too personal and too private. But I just kept feeling, having this nudge to do it. And though it certainly has not been something that has necessarily done anything for us financially, it has brought this amazing support community into being, and that's been an amazing experience. So, long-winded answer to your question, but I have to admit it started with fear, but turned into something that's been incredibly supportive.
Wow, that's amazing. And how did you help your husband like feel calm and supported and try to look at the world and listen to the world from his point of view?
That was a learning experience, absolutely, because I made all the mistakes that many people make with dementia early on, which is to try to use logic or reason to interact, with their loved ones, when in truth, their perspective is the only perspective they have. And so I learned pretty quickly that, I couldn't talk him out of anything. We went through periods of him actually not recognizing me. And I tried to show him pictures and I tried to show videos or things to remind him of who I was, but it didn't work. So what I learned very quickly is to truly go with his flow. So what does that mean? That means that, whatever he says is correct. I never tried to correct him or change his point of view. If he, and I had to surrender my agenda over and over again. Ben really needs help with everything. But there are times that he doesn't want to brush his teeth. So I'm like, okay, we're not brushing teeth right now, and there are times when he's just eaten and he wants to eat again. Now, I have to manage that a little bit, but if he's still hungry, if he's thirsty, I just go with whatever I can discern are his needs in the moment. And it's, again, kind of a daunting experience because we're used to interacting with others through what we feel is some sense of reason or logic, but that has to go out the window. And I guess the other piece of it is that I try to continually look at what's going on in the environment from his point of view as well, in terms of changes in light and temperature and noise. And so I try to manage the amount of incoming stimuli, and that helps him to stay calmer as well. So there's kind of both an emotional component to it in terms of not having any expectations of him whatsoever and truly going with his flow, and then also, managing the environment, and then, somewhere in there, taking care of myself too, because that helps me to stay calm so I can be patient and peaceful with him.
Yeah, definitely going with the flow and seeing things from his perspective. I'm sure those type of things help in his daily routine. And that kind of leads me on to my next question, which is what are some daily routines or like activities that you find to be beneficial in supporting him?
Uh, Ben's symptoms are pretty advanced, so most of our activities are around the basic functions of life. So, for instance, we eat at the same time. I give him his medications at the same time. He takes gummies, which have been enormously helpful, and those again at the same time, because there's something about routine and structure for all of us, quite honestly, that can help our nervous systems to calm down because we come to know what to expect. And that's true for him too. It's not like he can't learn or, or get into, a rhythm. And so I'm very careful, like we go for a ride at about the same time. And, things can happen to interrupt our routine, but I can tell the difference. I mean, I also have to really manage visitors to the house. Not that we get that many, quite honestly, but I even have, siblings that have come for a visit, and that's going to change things. So I do my best when, for instance, I had my sister was visiting for a few days, and I said, stay upstairs until we go through our morning routine. And then she came down gradually, and we would do things slowly, nothing too abruptly, nothing too, too much out of the ordinary. So it's so I would say for us, it's often, around those basic daily living activities. Sometimes Ben is calm and focused enough for us to read a book or do some art, and those are some activities that we'll do in the afternoon. And I'll do them for as long as he's interested. I mean, sometimes he's not at all. Sometimes we could do it for half an hour one day. And you have to keep experimenting. I think that's the other piece of it. So, there's this structure around our basic activities, and then I experiment kind of in between. And if he's interested, great. I mean, one day I had a ball and I started kind of kicking it back and forth with him, almost like a soccer ball. And he loved it. And we did it for 45 minutes. I was astonished, So again, there's that balance between doing things that are predictable and experimenting to give them a chance to have a different experience.
Yeah, that's like good that he finds interest in certain activities. And do you like continue to do those activities? And do you think it benefits you in other ways?
Certainly, I think providing some variety is going to keep, both my brain and his brain, stimulated. You want to have some cognitive stimulation and just not too much, So one of the biggest things that I've learned is to really trust my intuition and to take things slowly. Like if I find myself like even just doing tasks too quickly, around the house because I just want to get things done. I mean, every caregiver can relate to that, I'm sure. That can kind of throw us both off, So as I said, a lot of it is like just like really slowing down and asking myself, what might be a good thing to do right now? What's possible? What might be fun for me? Because the caregiver, we put so much of our time and attention on our loved one that it can feel like we're taking a back seat all the time. And, so now, for instance, when we go on our drives, I mean, I say like, where do I want to go on this drive, and what do I want to bring with me to make sure I'm comfortable, that I have drinks and snacks and everything that I need to be comfortable. So I think, as I said, there's an interesting balance, between really continuing to put your focus and ask yourself what your loved one would enjoy and bring yourself into the mix as well.
Yeah. And I know like living with someone who has dementia can come with ups and downs. And do you want to talk about some of the ups? Like what are some rewarding parts of this work for you?
Um, well, given that it's my spouse, of course, it's really daunting. It's challenging. But what's really amazing is that in any relationship, and I think everybody probably can recognize it, especially if you've been with someone for a long time, um, it's hard not to have expectations of your spouse. You know, Ben and I have known each other since I was 18 and he was 20. I mean, we grew up together. So you're going to end up having expectations. Some are good, some are not so good. But with this experience, I was forced to drop all expectations because I can't, because it's not like Ben won't do things, he can't do things. And so, what's been amazing, and I might get teary eyed about this, is that one day I was looking at him and I was like, what's that amazing feeling I'm having? And I realized it was unconditional love. I mean, I just love him so much, like right where he is, and I don't have any expectations. He can't disappoint me. He can't upset me. He can't, because, he's just being himself. And he's got this innocence, this beautiful spirit, that comes through every day. And so I feel really privileged to be with him and to have this next phase of our relationship and our journey together. And I have a strong faith, and I was praying for God to help me see this from a different perspective, because again, it can be very hard when you see the deterioration in someone's functional skills and their capacity to process. But I got this kind of aha moment where I realized that I'm actually privileged to help him ascend on his journey. So his spirit's ascending even while his body might be descending or deteriorating. And so I feel, as I said, it's kind of like, wow, like I have this opportunity to shepherd him at a time of his life when, he needs help with everything. And I can provide that for him and know that, I believe his spirit's eternal and I get to help his spirit go on to the next level whenever he does. So, and I have to
Yeah,
get a tissue on
that's
that one, sorry.
yeah, that's definitely touching. I really resonate to that, especially I see it with my grandparents, and it's just very hard to watch someone deteriorate. And I really liked hearing about how you cope with it and how you deal with it. So, what kind of advice would you give to young people who may be seeing this with their grandparents or with their loved ones and who they're trying to understand dementia and how maybe they can help?
Sure. I think, again, to really observe another human being and support them without again is without expectations, because again, as young people, I had expectations of my parents and my grandparents. I didn't think of it that way at the time, but whenever we went to visit my grandparents, we had a good time and they buy us presents, and grandparents are an important part of our lives, and they have a lot of wisdom. So I would say, it's just as you observe, and again, just love them right where they are. Don't have any expectations of them, because they really can't, meet those expectations. But their spirits are still very much in there. As I said, Ben's symptoms are really pretty advanced by any measurement tool you would use. And yet he will come out with the most profound things when you least expect it. Because I think what actually happens, I mean, sometimes I say it's God speaking right through him to me. It's amazing, because his speech has been affected the most, which is not true of all types of dementia. It is for him. So he rarely will say things I can understand, but frequently, out of nowhere, he will say something like, he'll grab my arm and I'll say, like, you're doing a great job. Or he'll say, like, you need more sleep, or take care of yourself, or you're beautiful. Or, I mean, he's even reached out to my caregivers, and, he reached out one time and he grabbed her arm and he said, your sister's going to be okay. And we were both like, what? And she was going through some really challenging things with her sister. But somehow, like, Ben got that message. So expect the unexpected in a good way. Just be with them, you know, and see what you can learn. Be curious instead of fearful. I think too many people can be afraid of dementia because it doesn't because you can't use reason or logic. So you're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if they're unreasonable or, you know, challenging? But the more you can just stay present with them, the better you'll be able to interact with them in an effective way, you know. So even when Ben's gotten really upset, if I just talk to him in a really calm tone and I use, you know, like a stroke his arm or, you know, get him something to drink and just help him to calm down, it works like 9 times out of 10. You know? So I'm not sure if that really answered your question, but I think it's really just being willing to be with them without any expectations and love them right where they are.
Yeah, it's definitely like difficult to keep yourself composed when you are going through this, especially like you mentioned with the expectations that he's still your husband and the feeling of wanting to be loved. So like how do you deal with this kind of like emotional roller coaster ride of caregiving, knowing that he is also struggling in his own mind?
Yeah, sure. Thankfully, I guess, I am actually trained as a life coach. That was kind of my second career. And I also experienced I had an autoimmune disease. I was really sick for about 10 years. And through both of those experiences, I learned a lot of techniques to calm my own nervous system down. So, and I use them all the time. So the first thing is to take 100% responsibility for your own nervous system. I can't rely on anybody outside of me to help me. I mean, I wish I could. I'm not saying I don't have a lot of grief. That's almost like a separate issue. But the first thing I learned I had to do was to, as I said, to take charge of my own nervous system, keep my cortisol levels as, you know, steady as possible so that I could think more clearly and make better choices, you know, for both myself and for Ben. But the other piece of that is allowing myself to to express my emotions when I can. I can't always in the moment because I'm in the middle of changing him or we're driving or whatever. And, you know, I'll feel this grief come up. But I make sure that at some point, you know, I get some time where I can let those big emotions out. I think, well, I don't think I know. I wasn't taught how to deal with big emotions. Usually as children, at least in our culture, we are told to sit down and be quiet and stop crying, and girls don't get angry and boys don't cry, and, you know, don't be afraid. We're always told not to express or feel our emotions. So it's not that we want their emotions to run away with us. I can't afford that. You know, I've got too much to do. But it takes a lot more energy for me to suppress my emotions than to allow them to move through me. So I don't judge my emotions at all. If I feel angry, if I feel resentful, I'm not angry at Ben. I'm not resentful of him. It's just the situation and it's coming up, and I don't feel guilty for my emotions at all. Some people do. I can't believe it. They're like, oh, I feel so guilty. I feel this way. I'm like, you're human, you know, so I'm not taking it out on Ben, but I'm giving myself a chance to express those emotions. One day, I admit, it was technology that triggered me. I was just like, I was ready to throw my computer out the window. And the truth is, I wasn't really angry at technology. That was just that, you know, tipped me over because I had a lot of grief. I had a lot of things I hadn't felt. So I went outside and I had a big emotion that had to be expressed, and it was a mixture of things. And so I needed to take some big actions. And I literally took ice cubes, smashed them on the driveway, and did a power walk around the circle. I do something called the emotional freedom technique, or tapping. I was tapping on my chest. I'm tapping on my head. You know, like, wah! And so I let it out. but I did it in as safe a way as possible so that, I mean, and there are times that I've actually gotten in the car and have done a primal scream or shut the bathroom door upstairs. And, if I am taking care of Ben and I just let it out. So I think, again, to answer your question, instead of trying to cope with my emotions or manage them, that usually is code for suppressing them. I let them out. And let them through me, and if I need a good cry, I mean, a good cry is just that. It's a good cry. It's a release. And actually, they've shown that, hormone levels actually shift in a positive way, when you can just let the emotions move through you. So that's how I do it.
Yeah. That's very touching to hear again. Like I love hearing about your story. And I know you kind of touched on your grief. And I just wanted to ask you, how do you like deal with your grief knowing that the person you're grieving is right next to you and you're taking care of them? Because I see that in my own family, and I just would like to hear your perspective on it.
Well, it's interesting because it used to be, and this is up until recently, that I didn't want to cry in front of Ben, because I thought I didn't want to upset him. But, and I don't know, if this will help somebody else or not, but the other day it hit me so hard and I just started to cry and I went over and I sat at his feet. He was sitting in a chair that he really loves. And I put my head on his lap and I cried. And he put his hand on my head and he said, "Oh, but so he actually comforted me. And I think there was a connection that I had been missing by not showing my grief in front of him. So, and what was great is that because of his, you could say his condition, he didn't try to fix it or manage it, because that's a mistake we sometimes make in relationships, right? Like we just want to feel the way we're feeling. I think oftentimes as women and our significant others will try to fix it. And we're like, no, I just want to feel how I feel. So I decided to just go with it. And it didn't upset him, and he actually comforted me, and it was a really good experience. So I'll try that again. See how it goes. Grief is a part of life, and I will say the other piece of it is that because I've probably been more afraid of the grief than anything, and sometimes I can project in my head and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm dealing with grief now. How am I going to deal with it when he's actually, physically gone? Because he will most likely go before I do." Um, we don't know that for sure, um, but I think when you love someone so much, along with that is going to come great grief. So I have to frequently ask myself, would you rather have not had this love together for this long? And the answer is no. Of course, I'm deeply grateful for the love that we've shared for so long. And so grief is going to be a part of life. But one more thing that I do think is an important thing to keep in mind is that there's grief and then there's unresolved grief. Unresolved grief, when it keeps haunting you and it keeps eating at you, is often due to undelivered communications. So let's say someone dies, perhaps unexpectedly. I had a younger sister die, unfortunately, and a lot of what I felt were things that I wished I had said to her or I wish she had known. And so I have some processes that I've used, even though she's physically gone. I've written her letters, I've done different things. But I make sure that I tell Ben every day how much I love him, how much he's made a difference in my life. And I'm very specific about the things. And I don't know if he can process any of that. It doesn't matter. I know I've communicated it. And whenever you're communicating with love, I believe our loved ones do understand that and feel it.
Yeah, I mean, it probably gives you like a sense of reassurance that you've done your part to
That's all I
communicate to
can do.
him,
Exactly.
right?
Right. So, because yes, I don't want him to leave the planet without him knowing every
Yeah.
day how much
Mhm.
he's meant.
I love that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
amazing to hear. So just a question to wrap up. Is there something that you wish people understood about families or people dealing with dementia that you may feel that there's like a misconception or anything to that extent?
Yeah, I wish people knew that being a dementia caregiver can be an extremely isolating experience. And it's understandable, but people are afraid because they don't know what to say and they don't know how to interact with someone that's, again, that is not operating in agreement with social norms. There are some types of dementia that can actually result in people saying embarrassing things or because they don't have any barriers anymore or any boundaries. And so what happens is that people kind of fall away and they don't even stay in touch with the caregiver. And that's very, very sad to me. So as I always say, if people have talked about coming to visit, and there have been a few of Ben's friends that have kept in touch, and I'm really grateful. And I've warned them. I'm like, it's not for the faint of heart, but I would love it if you would stop by, and like sometimes coming for a 5 or 10-minute visit, even, or 15, half an hour, or come watch a movie with us, or just come have a slice of pizza with us, just like, just interact with us as if, it's normal because this is our lives. And so, I think that's the biggest thing is to not be so afraid of it. Um, and to just be willing, to interact again and just accept the individual right where they are, and just allow it to be an expansive experience for you as well. So I have had people, my own siblings who have come to visit and Ben will recognize them, like, and it will be really surprising because one minute, like I had four of my siblings came to visit a little bit before Christmas, and granted, he's known them, since they were young because we've been together so long. But he like, shook my brother's hand and clapped him on the back and called him by name as if nothing had changed. And you're just like, wow, so it wasn't like that the whole time they were here, but it's like, give it a shot. So,
Yeah, dementia is such a crazy thing with like sometimes your brain just recognizes the person and sometimes it really doesn't. So I
yeah.
also want to ask like how was like Ben's journey to where he is now? Like when was he diagnosed? When did he start showing his symptoms, etc.?
If I put it all together, it could have started as early as 2020, like when we were going through COVID. Because at the time, I didn't really recognize it because he's an artist and a musician, so he tends to be very right-brained oriented, and I'm a scientist, and I like to think I've got some artistry in me too, but I tend to be much more left-brain oriented. And so, like, he would ask me to summarize the plots of movies, sometimes like 5 times, and I remember going like, yo, Ben, like, but I kind of chalked it up to, him just not paying attention the same way I did. And then I remember him asking me the same question like 5 times one day. And I said to him, like, yo, are you paying attention? And he said, well, are you writing a song in your head? And I was like, no, I'm not. You're right. So again, for me, I went for probably a year, maybe almost 2 years, not really putting it all together. And then, interestingly enough, he was actually using medical marijuana for anxiety, and he stopped it abruptly. It's kind of a long story, but the symptoms of dementia blew up about a week later in 2021. So at that point, there was no doubt whatsoever. But, and that is certainly a discussion I'm happy to share, with you any other time, but about how plant medicine is actually can probably be really helping a lot of the symptoms of dementia as opposed to making them worse. Yeah. So, so again, to answer your question, it was the other thing is that he had which I didn't realize at the time. His friends told me that sometimes he would have conversations with them and seem to have a distorted sense of time, like he thought we had been in our house for a year when in fact it had been 30 years, and he thought his parents had just died, and in fact, they've been gone for decades. So, so once I kind of put all those pieces together, it was pretty clear that there was something going on. Yeah. So that's been since, as I said, probably 2020.
I
So,
just searched it up and it's shown that like marijuana can be used to like comfort dementia side effects or
It, it's
yeah.
it's a game changer. An absolute game changer. It's
That's
not just a
interesting.
nice to have.
Hmm.
It was absolutely changed our lives because Ben was not sleeping, and his agitation was so bad. And he was placed on some drugs when he was in the hospital at one point. uh, those living with Lewy body dementia tend to be very sensitive to medications and the side effects. In fact, he was taking one drug that put him in the hospital because of the side effects. So I highly recommend that caregivers start with something like a gentle plant-based option that works on our endocannabinoid system in a positive way to help regulate it. Because what's going on in dementia is that system gets unregulated. And that's why we see so many behaviors like aggression, anger, sleeplessness, restlessness, agitation. And the company that I work with is called the Healer Company, and it was founded by physicians based on their clinical experience with patients living with dementia, and it has turned things around. That I mean, because Ben actually gets a solid 10, 11 hours of sleep at night now, which of course then helps his cognitive function during the day. We all do better with a good night's sleep. And so it's been enormously helpful, enormously. I can't say enough good things about it. So, you know, I hope people come to recognize that there should be no stigma attached to that. If anything, it's one of the most it's one of the gentlest ways that we can support our loved ones without all the side effects that the drugs that are typically used to treat symptoms come with.
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's an entire like discussion on
Yeah,
its
I
own,
thought.
right? Like there's a lot to talk about and definitely a lot of research and things to look into. And I definitely agree with you that there is a stigma around that and it shouldn't be
It's a shame.
overlooked just because of it.
Oh, no. I mean, as I
Yeah.
said, and too often there are traditional physicians aren't trained in, of course, in the use of the products, so that they will oftentimes resist them. But if caregivers would just ask their physician if they could partner together, and the company that I work with actually provides a guide for clinicians that you can get, and so that you can partner together with your traditional, specialists, with your medical team, and bring in something like this so that again you're working together, and that's the best thing for the patient or
Yeah,
your
I
loved one.
mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really about the patient and caring for them and making sure that they are um, like they're not being overlooked and their health is priority,
Yeah,
of
that they're as
course.
comfortable as
Yeah.
possible, because too often the traditional approach to challenging behaviors is just to sedate our loved ones, and it breaks my heart because that is not the way to go from my perspective. So there are other options. You don't have to choose between sedation and agitation. There's a third option, which is to use something that works with the body instead of against it.
Yeah, and just as a whole, I really think that the experience of caring for a loved one, it's very unique in the sense that it teaches you things and you're able, like I'm able, like with my own personal situation with my grandparents, I'm able to see from their perspective, and I definitely resonate with what you said earlier about going with the flow and make like you don't argue with them, like whatever they say is right. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
you're in their world and
Yeah.
you put yourself in their shoes, and I really think that it's very valuable to get your insight on that. I mean, I
And
yeah,
consider that that's actually a really good principle for all relationships. Think about
yeah,
how often we think our point of view is right, and we try to convince other people to our point of view. And I'm like, let's stop doing that. Why don't we listen to other people's point of view? And that's one of the things we can learn. So I think, what I've learned through this phase of my relationship with Ben has actually helped me with all my relationships. So, because who says that just because it's my perspective, it's the right one?
yeah, exactly. I feel like it's you can definitely apply that to other
Yeah.
relationships, not just with dementia.
No, it's an important principle. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Shivali, do you have anything to add?
No, that like I mean that's all of the questions like we have for now. We'd love to like bring you on maybe potentially in the future to talk about it. And I loved all the topics you covered. It's also so important to definitely, yeah, again, see the world from their point of view, not just in a like illness view that he has one, but also even in general, just like looking at the world and understanding other people. And it's kind of like a follow-up question, but is there anything like specific that you really appreciated after like ha having to deal with someone with dementia or things that you kind of like took for granted in the past maybe?
Oh yeah. I mean, I hate to say this, but I took I took Ben for granted. I mean, you've been together with somebody for so long, and um, was I always listening to him? No, I'd be in my own head about my own stuff, and so again, that's just being human. But what's kind of funny right now, in a way, is that now I hang on his every word. I'm aware of his every elimination event, everything he puts in his mouth, every time, it's like I'm tuned into everything about him. And in a way, it really gets me off my own stuff, because again, there's a difference between kind of selfishly wanting my own agenda and self-care. Again, self-care could be a whole separate, discussion. But now it's really, he's taught me again how to, focus on somebody else and what their needs are, which, as I said, kind of gets me off my own stuff. And what's so lovely too is that again, since I'm not trying to convince him about anything and just going with his flow, it's amazing how much you don't really need a lot of words anymore. It's smiles, it's hugs, it's your tone of voice and your pacing. It's actually it's kind of a beautiful way to just keep expressing my love for him, without really any effort. It's just yeah, you communicate in so many ways, and it actually ends up helping you too.
Yeah,
Love given comes back to you in ways that you won't always imagine.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's like not just about the materialistic things, it's just about emotions and time, especially.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and in general, it's feelings before facts. Don't try to
Yeah.
deal with facts with your loved one, but feelings are very important, so you can communicate those in many ways.
and I know you mentioned self-care, and I really think I know it's an entire discussion on its own, but I really do believe that taking care of yourself will ultimately allow you to take care of the person that needs care. And prioritizing yourself can also it's necessary actually in order to be able to give that person your attention and in order to be able to um obviously like you said like deal with their needs, right?
Well,
And
it is. And I think one of the hard parts is that, again, and I'll speak from my generation, we weren't really taught how to take care of ourselves.
yeah,
Women in particular were not. So it's a nice concept, but how do you actually do it? And so it's one of my missions, I guess, for supporting my online community is to continually, share some tips about how you actually do that. I mean, one thing which is pretty big for me is that I actually have someone here at night to take care of Ben because sleep to me is a non-negotiable. I can't operate if I don't get sleep. Now that costs money, but it's also helping me to be creative. I have actually found college students and, not, much older than you, for instance, who, have been willing to, stay with Ben. It's fine with me if they sleep next to him as long as they get up in case he needs help, So, I mean, there are ways and there's, we can ask family members, we can ask neighbors, we can, sometimes you really have, in order to take care of yourself, you have to swallow your pride and ask for help because this is not something that can be done alone. When they say it takes a village, to raise a child, it takes a city, to really support someone who's living with dementia because it has a lot of added challenges to it. And so, it's self-care really, involves me saying, who else can help, and making some of those decisions that are what I would call non-negotiables. I need to sleep. I have water bottles all over the house to make sure I stay hydrated. I have easy meals to make sure, but I make sure I eat. I make sure, I move. And I have a lot of other techniques that something as simple as deep breathing, that really helps me keep my nervous system calm during the day. So it's a necessity. It's just not always clear about how to do that when you're doing, when you're caring for someone else. So that's one of my passions is to share with other caregivers at least what works for me and to exchange those ideas so we can support each other.
Yeah, I imagine honestly that like having your entire platform with like over like 100,000 people, I mean, is honestly a great support group. And it's awesome
Yeah.
that you're able to share that with them. And it really goes both ways, honestly, because you're able to share your knowledge with them and they're able to receive it. And it's just, I love that. I mean,
Well,
it's
it
amazing.
turned my opinion about social media around 100%.
Yes, I imagine it did. And I mean, it's very interesting to see how people across the globe, I mean, I faced this, like, we're like thousands of miles away, and I feel like my grandparents and you, they're they're experiencing the same thing, and I feel like it's a universal experience
It
almost that
does. It does. It
it can
connects us
be.
all. It really
It
connects.
does.
I mean, we have followers in South Africa and Australia, and and it's we're all going through the same experience. There's just no difference. So it really does, dissolve those boundaries that we can sometimes
Yeah.
put up between
And I'm really
countries.
grateful that you're able to share your experience and your knowledge with um our following, and I really think that it will be great for them to hear this. And
Well, thank you
obviously,
for being willing. I mean, I'm always say I'm so sorry that you know this journey personally, with your grandparents. So give them a big hug from me, okay, from us, and to let them know they're not alone. I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do for caregivers because so often, again, they can feel isolated. So just letting, people know that you care. I mean, and through this initiative, I think it's wonderful that you're helping, other people your age know how to address this if it happens in their families too.
yeah, definitely. It was great talking to you today,
Thank
and
you
I
so
definitely
much.
hope that we're able to do this again. And yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
give Ben a hug from us
I
too.
will, I will do that for sure. I love to give him hugs. So, and I'd be my pleasure to do it again, and we can, take another focus. So, thank you
Yeah,
so much for this
Yeah,
opportunity
thank
to share.
thank you.